Welcome back to EtherLink AI Insights. I'm Alex, and today we're diving into something that's reshaping how businesses operate, especially in Europe's innovation hubs. We're talking about agentic AI and multi-agent systems, and specifically how organizations in Rotterdam and beyond are navigating the 2026 compliance landscape. Sam, this feels like one of those topics where the hype and the reality are finally starting to align, right?
Absolutely. And what's interesting is that Rotterdam isn't just a random location to focus on. It's actually a perfect case study. You've got this massive port, financial services, logistics companies all operating in tight coordination. When agentic AI enters that environment, the stakes are genuinely high. We're not talking about theoretical exercises anymore. This is mission-critical infrastructure.
Right, so let's start with the basics. When we say agentic AI, what exactly are we talking about? Because I think a lot of people might conflate this with chatbots they've interacted with, and I sense there's a pretty fundamental difference.
Huge difference. A traditional chatbot, even a sophisticated one, is reactive. You ask it a question, it responds. An agentic system is proactive. It perceives its environment, identifies problems before they escalate, makes decisions independently, and takes action. In a port context, instead of waiting for someone to report a shipping delay, an agentic system detects it, alerts stakeholders, routes the issue to the right department, and initiates corrective actions, all autonomously.
So it's moving from answer my question to fix this problem before I even realize it exists. That's a massive shift in how we think about automation, and the business case is pretty compelling. I saw in the research that Gartner found 35% improvements in operational efficiency and 40% faster decision cycles. Those aren't small numbers.
No, they're substantial, and McKinsey's data shows 65% of Western European enterprises are planning agentic deployments by end of 2026. This isn't bleeding edge anymore. It's becoming standard practice. In the Netherlands specifically, agentic AI is being classified as critical infrastructure for maintaining competitive advantage in port logistics and FinTech. The search volume for these terms is up 180% year over year.
So there's real demand, not just tech evangelists shouting into the void. But here's where it gets complicated, right? Because all of this is happening against the backdrop of the EU AI Act, which is now in enforcement phases. How do organizations actually build these systems while staying compliant?
That's the central tension. The EU AI Act is specifically targeting high-risk applications, including autonomous agents used in customer service and enterprise operations. So you're trying to capture the efficiency gains while operating within a regulatory framework that demands transparency, accountability, and clear governance. It's not impossible, but it requires intentional architecture.
When you say intentional architecture, what does that actually look like? Can you walk us through a real example?
Perfect. So imagine a mid-sized Rotterdam port operator. Traditional setup had manual coordination between terminal operations, customs clearance, shipping lines, and trucking companies. All different systems, information silos everywhere. Cargo was getting delayed 12 to 18 hours just because data wasn't flowing properly. So they deployed a multi-agent system with specialized agents. One handles terminal operations and berth availability, another manages customs clearance, a third coordinates shipping lines, a fourth handles the trucking logistics.
And the beauty of that architecture is each agent becomes an expert in its domain, right? So instead of one centralized system trying to do everything, you've got 4 focused specialists working in parallel.
Exactly, and that's where the multi-agent approach really shines. You get scalability, add new agents without redesigning everything. You get resilience. If one agent fails, the others keep operating. And you get specialization. Each agent optimizes for its specific problem space. The port operator cut cargo delays from 12-18 hours down to 2-3 hours. That's operational improvement you can measure in real money.
But how do they ensure that's happening compliantly? Like, what are the governance pieces that need to be in place?
This is where the AI lead architecture approach becomes critical. You need clear documentation of what each agent does, how decisions are made, audit trails for every autonomous action, especially ones that affect customers or regulatory requirements. The EU AI Act requires that for high-risk systems. You also need human oversight mechanisms. Agentic doesn't mean unmonitored.
So you're building in circuit breakers, essentially. Points where a human can understand what happened and intervene if needed.
Precisely. And here's the practical reality that a lot of organizations miss. Transparency isn't a compliance checkbox. It's actually a business advantage. When stakeholders, your customers, your regulators, your own team, can understand why an agent made a decision, trust increases. You reduce liability. You can train and improve the system more effectively.
That's a really important reframing. So transparency becomes a feature, not just a regulation. What about ROI? Because organizations are going to ask, what's this actually going to cost me and how long until it pays for itself?
The ROI is typically visible within 6 to 12 months for operational efficiency. Plays like the port example. You're looking at reduced processing time, fewer manual handoffs, fewer errors. Customer service deployments show faster resolution and higher satisfaction. But there's also a less obvious benefit: competitive positioning. Early adopters in specialized sectors like logistics or finance gain a structural advantage that's hard for competitors to catch up on later.
And the compliance investment, is that a separate cost, or does it actually get built in as part of good system design?
It's both. You do need dedicated compliance resources, legal review, documentation, audit systems. But if you build it in from the start, rather than bolting it on later, the overhead is manageable. It's when organizations try to retrofit compliance that costs explode. The key is starting with a compliance-aware architecture right from the design phase.
So timing matters. Getting ahead of this curve, building it right the first time, is significantly cheaper than trying to fix it after launch. That's a powerful incentive for Rotterdam organizations specifically, given the port's competitiveness.
Absolutely. And here's something that doesn't get enough attention: human-AI collaboration models. The most successful deployments we're seeing aren't replacing humans, they're augmenting human expertise. A cargo specialist working alongside an agentic system that handles the routine coordination and escalates exceptions to the human. That's where the real value emerges.
Right. It's not autonomous replacement, it's coordinated partnership. The system handles volume and pattern matching, humans handle judgment and complex problem solving.
Exactly. And that model is actually more defensible from a compliance perspective, too. You've got a clear human-in-the-loop for high-stakes decisions. The system documents its recommendations, humans make the final call. That transparency and accountability satisfy the EU AI Act requirements while actually making your operations more robust.
So if someone's listening to this and thinking about implementing agentic AI in their organization, whether they're in Rotterdam or anywhere else in Europe, what's the most important first step?
Honestly, start with a compliance audit of your current systems and your regulatory obligations. Map out where autonomous decision-making would create the most impact and the most risk. Then design your pilot around that intersection. Get legal and technical teams collaborating from day one. And pilot with enough real data to prove the concept, but controlled enough that you can iterate without catastrophic consequences.
So it's not, let's build the cool tech and figure out compliance later. It's, let's design the cool tech within our constraints.
Right. And honestly, that actually leads to better technology. Constraints drive innovation. When you have to be transparent and auditable, you design cleaner systems. When you have to think about failure modes and human oversight, you build more resilient architectures. The regulation, when approached thoughtfully, actually improves the end product.
That's a refreshing perspective. So agentic AI and compliance aren't in tension. They can actually reinforce each other if you approach them thoughtfully. Sam, this has been genuinely insightful. For our listeners who want to dig deeper into the specific compliance frameworks, the Rotterdam case studies, and the hybrid human-AI collaboration models we've touched on, the full article is on etherlink.ai. You'll find detailed implementation guidance, regulatory checklists, and more real-world examples. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time on EtherLink AI Insights.
Great conversation, Alex. And yeah, definitely check out the full piece on etherlink.ai. There's a lot more depth there. Thanks to our listeners for tuning in. See you next episode.